Hey. Hi, I'm Carl, I'm an addict. Oh, it sounds bad through this. Thanks. I just want to thank the Convention Committee again. I know what it's like. It's graft. I've done a lot of service on convention committees, and let's not forget the F&E committee that have also supported this convention as well. It is hard work, so big shout out to them. And thanks also for asking me to share as well. And Joe, thanks for your share. It was nice to listen to you. Welcome anyone if it's your first convention. If it makes you feel any better, or you've been to a couple of conventions, I still walk into conventions full of self-obsession. Like everyone has been waiting all year just to watch me walk in and think about me and talk about me and look about me. And all this stuff's going through me. And I'm talking about this now just to sort of bring myself down and ground myself in the moment that I get it. And it isn't getting that much easier, walking into a convention, this stuff and it's my stuff. At the end of the day, no one even knows if I'm coming. And that's the truth. And no one's really asked if I don't show up. And that's the real truth of it. But I suffer with the disease of addiction, and a lot of the times most of the times today it shows itself as self-obsession. I can't stop thinking about me, and because it's so much, I think you're all thinking about me too. So if it's your first convention or your first couple of conventions, or if you've been coming for decades and you still feel that way, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. I'm feeling a bit the same as me if you are. If anyone's still using, I just want to give you a shout out. I am so glad you're here using rather than out there using, because you've got hope. You've got hope and there's a chance. I was the addict who first came to Narcotics Anonymous on a script, still using whatever else I could because I was on that script. I hadn't surrendered to the drugs at that point, never mind to a solution. And because I was on a script, I was still controlling, manipulating, keeping bits back for the weekend, but I wasn't using, and I know what it's like to be sitting through NA fellowship meetings, whatever, and you're not clean. Talk about feeling different. Talk about feeling completely like an outsider, a loner, and you can't get it. So welcome if you're still using. So while I'm thinking about that, I love it at the Clean Town the countdown on a Sunday if somebody gets up for 3 days clean. That fills me with some special stuff up, because you know that they've got clean the first day of the convention, they haven't used for that weekend. And that is some big stuff for me that really matters. So, if you're here using, you've got a chance. So welcome, I get it. So that's me sort of a bit more grounded now. So yeah, similarities, not differences. Very similar to what Joe's just been sharing, and I'm going to be saying we and us a lot in this share, and I don't like to share on behalf of other people, but when I'm saying we and us, I'm sharing as how I identify and how a lot of other people I've spoken to who has identified it the same. And I'm not saying everyone. So I'm saying we, and you're sat there thinking, don't fucking talk for me, I'm not like that sound, but I'm just going to, we and us means, people that I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people in Narcotics Anonymous. And especially when it comes to feeling different and separate and apart from, and the things that drive those feelings, a lot of people share the same stuff that I feel. So that's the we and us explanation before I get into it. As a kid, it's just been shared very similar to what Joe said. I've always felt very different and always separate from everybody. I'm a gay guy that was brought up in a very dominant Christian household in a society where I didn't know anybody else who was gay, and that made me entirely different. Even before I knew what sexuality was, I was so young. Looking back, I was so young when I was aware of my sexuality, way before puberty or anything like that, way before sexual awareness. I was like 4 or 5 and had this attraction towards guys when I look back at such a young age, and it wasn't allowed. It was against God. I was going to burn in hell. It was a sin. This is the way I was brought up, and I was raised terrified of who I was as a human being. That separated me from the rest of the world even before I know. So was it the disease of addiction separating me at a young age? Was I born an addict? Did I have it then? I don't know, and it doesn't matter. But I'll tell you what, I felt different and separate as a child, so much so that I became a straight guy. Not possible. I started behaving like a straight guy. If you'd have asked me up until the age of 23, was I gay or straight, I'd have said I'm straight and I'd have believed it. Literally forced myself into the role of another human being from early childhood through fear of being all rejected, fear of being abandoned and rejected and told I was wrong and I was going to burn in hell. All this fear. I lived the life of a straight guy, so I was having relationships with girls, I was, doing lads things and all the rest of it, and I've always felt different, always felt apart from and always felt separate then, and it became a norm. It became a norm for me to be the different one out, but I'll tell you when that difference, I either didn't feel it or it didn't matter, was the first time I got pissed. Because my first drug that gave me problems was alcohol. And I remember at a really young age, when I was getting pissed, it was a house party or something like that. I remember just being in the downstairs loo and looking in the mirror. And it was like the drug had took away the feelings of isolation, they took away the feelings of loneliness, they took away the feelings of separation, they took away the differences, and it made me feel like I fitted in my skin. It made me feel like I belonged. I was able to speak to people. I was able to communicate. I didn't feel like I was being rejected by everyone before I was even being rejected, even though I wasn't being rejected because I was so used to terrified, scared of being rejected. It took away all that. Why wouldn't I carry on doing that stuff? So did I develop the disease through my using, or was the disease there? I don't know and I don't care. And I'll never know. I'll never have that answer, and it doesn't matter because the solution works no matter how I got this disease or where it came from. The solution's the same. Because the drug made me feel so good, I did it as often as I could. I did it whenever I could. And when I wasn't doing it, I was constantly thinking about it, and I was obsessed about it. And it was all that was on my mind was, when is it going to happen next? When am I going to do it again? So I just kept on doing it, It got to the point where my first inpatient detox, I was 19 years of age. I went for an alcohol detox. Being treated and helped by people who didn't have a clue. And I will not slag off services because I think services do such an important role in our community to help people to get to us. But they didn't know that I had the disease of addiction. I didn't know I had the disease of addiction. No one I spoke to knew I had the disease of addiction. But they were just dealing with the symptoms they were presenting them with. And the amount of times that those people and people like them have literally saved my life over the years. Not a chance am I going to start slagging off services or the people that do that stuff or work in that field. But they just didn't know. And I was 46 when I got clean. And right up until that point, and it took a while for me to figure it out even after that point, I didn't know what I suffered with. I drank and I drank and I drank till it got to the point because it was the only thing that made me feel comfortable. And I've always used to share when I first came into recovery that I used to take drugs because I absolutely fucking love taking drugs. By doing the step work and by looking at myself and looking at the truth in things, what I believe to be true generally isn't. By going through the steps and looking at that stuff, it wasn't that I loved taking drugs. That was not my truth. My truth is I absolutely hated the way I felt when I wasn't using. And there's a difference. I was so removed by the drugs from that discomfort and how I identify. That question, step one, what does the disease of addiction mean to me? I'll tell you what it means to me. A complete and utter inability to sit in my skin as a human. A complete uncomfortableness with who I am as a person. I just don't like the way I feel. Because the drugs remove that. That's why I enjoyed them so much. It wasn't because I loved being high, it was because I hated not being high. So I kept doing it and I kept doing it and I kept doing it. And wherever I went in life I felt different. Until I started to feel similar. And even then at times I'd feel different and separated. But I'd stick around in a situation until I started to feel similar. So, when I was drinking, I was around people who was drinking, so I was the same as those people who was drinking. And I got to the point where I started to feel right. And I'll tell you this now, when I was drinking, there was not a chance I was going to take any other kind of drug. Because any other kind of drug apart from alcohol, you were a proper fucking wrong 'un. Proper wrong. And that was my judgment, and that is what allowed me to keep on drinking, because I was looking at, you know, what you lot were doing to justify what I was doing. Anything. So while I was drinking, anyone who took any other drug was a complete and utter wrong, and that allowed me to do that. It tells me in our literature that I can stop using the moment I stop justifying my using. And believe me, I went through, after alcohol got to the point where it nearly killed me when I was about 34, I managed to stop drinking. I went to another fellowship. I didn't do a step. I didn't get a sponsor. I didn't get any phone numbers, didn't get involved, but just on the rooms, I managed to stop drinking and was drug-free at that point for 2-3 days, until I had this really clever thought. I know what I'll do. I'll get whiz instead, because I can't drink. They weren't battering on about this other stuff. They were just going on about the alcohol, and that's all I tuned into. So my thinking was, I know. And the truth is, I then went through what I call the league table of drugs in my head. I had them out in a league table. What was bad, what was worse, what was worse. Every single one I was taking because I was justifying it by the one I wasn't taking. So when I was taking the whiz, at least I wasn't taking coke. When I was taking coke, at least I wasn't taking pills. When I was taking pills, at least I wasn't taking MDMA. When I was at MDMA, at least I wasn't taking crystal meth. When I was on the crystal meth and injecting that stuff, at least I wasn't doing smack and crack, because that was really bad. That was the really bad one. Thank God I found an A when I started hitting up smack and crack. But I'm telling you why I went to that point now, because I found a way to justify my using through all of that. Because I looked at something worse. Never looked at anything like stopping, you know. And I'd love to be, you know, I'd love to share what everyone else shares, and what I used to share when I first came around before I found my truth. Is I tried everything to get clean before I came to NA. I didn't. That isn't my truth. I didn't try everything to get clean before I came to NA. Because not once did I try to stop using. And all these wild and batshit crazy things I was doing to try to stop using, or trying to make my life better. Not once did I try and stop using. I'd move to a different continent. I'd find a different partner. I'd find different friends to do it with. I'd find a different drug. So I can't say that I tried everything to stop using before I came to Narcotics Anonymous. I didn't. Because none of my plans to make my life better involved stopping using, even though I knew it was the drugs causing the problem. Because along with the disease of addiction comes a lot of insanity. I knew it was the drugs causing the problem. I remember when I moved to South America, it wasn't to stop using, it was so my life would be okay, and to leave the pain that I was living in. You're thinking, well, I can't describe insanity. I knew it was the drugs causing the problem. I knew that if I stopped them, my life would improve in some way. I had one plan in my moving to South America. I didn't know where I was going to stay. I didn't know what I was going to do when I got there. I didn't know how I was going to get back, because I had a one-way ticket. Didn't know any of that. But I had the duty-free in my head. I was going to buy a big fuck-off bottle of vodka in the duty-free. And that was going to get me there. That gave me the confidence to go, and that's all I needed. Because all I needed in life was drugs, and that's where my life became. It got to the point where all I needed was drugs. When I first came to NA, you know, just skipping forward a bit, you know that bit where it says, you know, if you've got any drugs or drug paraphernalia, can you please take it outside, stash it, and then come back in and sit there? And I was like, no, because I was terrified. Terrified of being without drugs. Because they'd become my similar, they'd become my norm, they'd become my usual. So all this batshit crazy stuff I was doing nothing but driving myself further and further and further into the ground. And I'd love to say that I got rock bottom and then got clean. It wasn't my story. I didn't hit a rock bottom. I thought I'd hit a fucking solid piece of underground and then just kept on skidding along that for fucking decades. 20 years I was in a rock bottom, up and down, and hitting them again and feeling a bit better and then going down again, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. My truth is there's a meeting just up the road there that backs onto a multi-storey car park. I remember going to that meeting when I was first getting clean. Feeling a bit emotional there. I used to sleep and hit up smack in the stairwell that joins onto that room. This is my stomping ground that I'm sat in. This is where the unfamiliar became familiar. This is where the differences became similar for me and my using. Because I was on the streets doing horrific things. I used to sell myself to get crack because I didn't know what enough was. I used to do all that kind of stuff to get as many drugs as I possibly could to fill myself because I couldn't get full of them enough. And the lifestyle became familiar. So I stuck at it. I wasn't a quitter. I stuck at that. And what was... Just to give you a bit of context, I qualified as a barrister once just to try and get my family's approval. Just so my mum would say, I love you for who you are. I qualified as a barrister. 12 months later, I was in Strangeways doing a 7-year stretch. That life just sort of continued. From when I hit prison, it just kind of got worse and worse and worse, and I carried on doing that stuff. And I'll tell you how familiar and similar it was for me living on the streets from what I was doing in the past to living on the streets. It became similar and it became familiar. And the message to any newcomer from that is if you stick at something long enough, you'll see similarities. I came to NA to enable my using is my truth. I was trying to manipulate a key worker who kept on holding on to me because my partner had just committed suicide. I was going downhill in a rapid way, and the key worker in the drug centre was like, I don't know what to fucking do with you, just do one thing. And she was keeping me there for like an hour every time I went to get my script. I was like, oh fucking hell. I just want to use. I just want my script to get me up so I can go out and score. And then I don't want to be listening to all your key workery stuff. She said, do us a favour. I said, I give up. She said, just do one thing before you come for your next script. Just do one thing that's positive. That one thing I did was I came to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. So I came. So I could get my script quicker. That's why I came to NA. Which is when I hear people saying, you don't do this, you've got to do it for yourself, you can't be doing it for your family, you can't be doing it for, you've got to do this. I don't give a fuck why people turn up to NA. I came up to NA to use more, and I'm sat here 5.5 years clean because I did. That's my truth, so I don't care why you're in the room. I don't even care if you've got a desire to stop using yet. It'll happen. Stick around us for long enough, because I didn't have a desire to stop using when I got here. I was going to do the steps on the script. I was going to do the steps on a script. I was going to find a sponsor who's going to take me through the steps on the script, and you were all cunts, those who wouldn't take me through the steps on the script. I used to email World Service, this is before I was clean, emailing World Service, trying to get World Service to back me up on the fact that they shouldn't be telling me I can't take a script and do the steps. It's an outside issue, it's medical, it's prescribed by a doctor. He didn't get back to me. He didn't get back, but he did. But that's the kind of person I was when I came to Narcotics Anonymous. I had a really bad attitude and a dodgy bus pass. I've lost the bus pass. But did I feel different when I walked into that first NA meeting? I don't know if it was true at the time, but I believed I was the only one still using. I was looking around the room thinking, this lot aren't like me. But I believed what they were saying. I believed they'd been where I was. A lot of people say I didn't believe this, or I didn't believe that, or I didn't even think they were clean. I don't know whether I was naive, gullible, or just so desperate to believe at that point. Just so desperate for the help. I really don't know if I wanted it to help so much that I stuck at it. But I tell you what, I was different. First of all, when I went to when I was around my first meetings, I was the only gay in the village. I'm going to rephrase that. I was the only honest gay in the village who was actually upfront about it.
Tell us about the ones you rang.
I'll get on to that in a minute. That's when I found the similarities. I was the only gay in the village. I remember one specific meeting. I went out on the break and I was still using, I was still a newcomer. There was a gang of male lads that were stood over at that side and a gang of females stood there. They sort of separated when they went out. As you see it in meetings, the lads stood to the lads. And I'm going to use the words that the lads were using now, and it's not the way I would refer to this situation, but the lads were talking about going to brass houses and football. Didn't feel comfortable stood down because I felt completely alienated. I went over to the girls and the women. The women were talking about the things that women experience coming into recovery, trying to get the kids back, losing the kids, having fights with social services. Didn't identify with any of that. Didn't identify with the lads, but I had this drive to keep coming back because I was so fucking broken when I got here and I was willing to stick around. So I felt so separate And very quickly I started to find similarities in meetings simply because I couldn't connect to the people for who they were as people. But I tell you what I could connect to quite quickly on was the places they've been to and the feelings. And that's where I started to find similarities. And that's where my differences didn't matter because I was different. I've always been different. Fucking used to being different. Wasn't asked about being different. Wasn't asked I was a gay in the village. I was used to fronting that kind of shit. But I started to find similarities just in the feelings that people were talking about. I understood broken. I understood desperate. When people were sharing, I understood loneliness and isolation, rejection, fear, abandonment. And I tuned into that stuff when people were sharing. So it didn't matter what they were talking about, it mattered how they were talking about it. And they're the similarities that I started to connect to straight away. You know, our first tradition tells us that my recovery depends on the unity of this fellowship. My recovery depends on the unity of this fellowship. The unity of this fellowship is sought through similarities, and they are there. If you're new around or you've not been around long enough to find the similarities, they are so there, because I'll tell you what, every addict I've spoken to at some point in their life has been the black sheep of some kind. And that's everyone I've ever spoke to. No one I've ever spoken to in fellowship has ever said to me, oh, you have always fitted in. So it didn't matter that I didn't fit in because I was a straight lad being brought up in a Christian household. It didn't matter what it was or why I didn't fit in. It didn't matter if so-and-so didn't fit in because, like Joe's just said, parents got divorced when she was younger, if that was a difference. It takes us to the same types of feelings of separation, loneliness and isolation, which is where my disease has an absolute field day. To be different, to be separate, to be isolated. And I'll tell you what, I've been around long enough and spent enough time around enough neighbours to know that I am so similar to nearly everybody that's got the disease of addiction because of that isolation, that loneliness, that rejection, that fear and that abandonment. Because I'll tell you what, that's the stuff I'm writing about in my steps at the moment. It's the stuff I'm working on right now, is how I've rejected myself and how I've felt rejection from others because that was reflected onto me. How am I doing? Okay. I don't think I've got a bit longer than that. I am not, because I've stuck around and I've identified where I need to identify, I am not the lonely, isolated, separate, rejected, abandoned child anymore thanks to Narcotics Anonymous. I found me because you lot showed me that I was worth it. You lot stuck by me while I was doing it, and I'm doing a lot of work at the moment on going back to the old me. Going back to past versions of me, whether it's through breath work, whether it's through meditation. I always take my higher power there with me, but I go back and doing a lot of inner child work at the moment. Because I was so separate all my life. Those versions of me need to heal as well. I need to take care of the person who couldn't be taken care of by others. Through courage that's not mine. Through courage that I found through a sponsor that cares about me, and another sponsor that used to care about me, well, still does, but he's not a sponsor anymore. Through courage that's not mine, I'm able to do that stuff. I'm able to go and see how isolated I was at so many points in my life. Try being the only gay guy in H-Wing in strange ways. I've been back there through inner child work as an adult. I wasn't a child as an adult. To let myself know that I wasn't different, I was just the only one that was fronting it. I love what Narcotics Anonymous has given me. As I love what I'm finding in myself and other people. Because I've connected to myself as a human being, I find it so easy these days to connect to you guys. To create the unity, to show you the similarities. Because I share honestly and I share raw and I share my truth, I know a lot of people can connect to me, even if they haven't got the courage to say, I connect to you, I get it. And maybe they're not the only one in the room that feels the way they're feeling. Maybe they just think they can't share it. Well, that's fine. Know that you're not alone. I'm not alone today thanks to Narcotics Anonymous. I see the similarities everywhere because I see past the circumstance. And I see into the feeling, I see into the emotion, and I see into the pain because I've lived it. And I still carry it. And I'm still working on that stuff. And thank God there isn't a journey it's not a journey that's not going to end. Thank God I'll always keep going on this journey. There isn't I've been sharing this quite a lot and it gets a bit of a laugh for some people. Thank God there's no platinum keyring in Narcotics Anonymous that you get when you've been around for a few decades. Because I'll tell you what, I've seen people with decades in, broken to fuck. Struggling like you wouldn't believe. Because when I first came around and I was trying to get clean and I was new and I was looking at these people who were so different from me in my thinking at the time because they got 10 years clean, must be fixed. That's what I thought when I first got here. Looking at these people, still have the same struggles, still have the similar feelings that I get today. It hasn't gone away, that stuff, they just find a way to deal with it. And with the God in my life and with Narcotics Anonymous and the steps and the support of everybody else around me, I know that no matter what I'm feeling, I don't have to fucking use. I don't have to use no matter what happens in my life. As long as I keep doing this stuff. For someone who didn't know how to stop using, and it's always weird when you say to someone who's not an addict, they didn't know how to stop using, because I was like, duh, don't use. I didn't know how to stop using when I came to NA. I didn't know how to. Just don't pick up, shut the fuck up. I didn't know how to stop using. I had to use. And I knew I was going to use. Every day I woke up and knew I was going to use, no matter what situation I was in, whether I was in prison, on the streets, whether I was waiting for a benefit. I knew I was going to use that day. I knew it. Today I know I'm going to go to bed clean. I know it. Because I've woke up this morning, I've connected to a God of my understanding, I've connected to other people, I've tried my best to be principled throughout my day, and I know I'm going to go to bed clean tonight. And I just hope you can take that as a similarity from me today. Thanks for letting me share, I'll leave it there.
Thanks so much, Paul. It was lovely to listen to you. Two very different experiences and